Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. We're out here braving this cold New England February because it is almost time for one of my favorite times of year, and that is seed starting season. Now, in preparation for seed starting season, I am going to be mixing up a batch of my favorite potting soil. So I decided to take you guys along for the ride and just show you how I'm going to mix that up. I'm going to be experimenting a little bit with it this year and trying some new things. But before we go ahead and mix that up, I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the difference between starting your seeds in potting soil versus seed starting mix. I'm going to tell you which one I do and the reasons why you may want to consider doing one or the other. Now, I did kind of tell you guys already that I do start my seeds in potting soil. So it's a little breezy out here. I hope you guys will bear with me. This is definitely an outdoor project. I have mixed up this potting soil in my kitchen before, but it's not ideal. It makes a little bit of a mess. So between the breeze and the noise of my chickens scratching around in the background, hopefully you'll be able to hear me okay and this won't be too bad. But as I said, before we get started mixing up this year's batch of potting soil, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of why I start my seeds in potting soil as opposed to seed starting mix. Definitely either one is a great choice. You just want to know why you're choosing what you're choosing. So basically, as far as I know, in my experience, there are two primary differences between seed starting mix and potting soil. The first one is that seed starting mix you'll find is lighter and fluffier. Now the reason for that is because when seeds first germinate, they have these fine little roots that really are going to struggle to get through heavy soil. And seed starting mix, because of that, is designed to just be very light and fluffy and very easy for those roots to penetrate and grow deep. Now that is one reason why I'll interject here that you do not want to start your seeds in regular garden soil. It's just really too heavy and dense for those seeds to grow and do well. Now, I will say I don't completely understand the science behind it because, of course, you can plant seeds directly in your garden, and many times they grow completely fine growing in that same garden soil. So I'm not sure exactly what it is about being inside versus outside that makes it so that they have trouble growing in that soil, but there is something about it. So when you're starting seeds inside, you definitely want to opt for something lighter than garden soil. All right, so I changed direction a little bit because the sun was starting to set and coming down over the trees and getting right in my eyes. So it was probably making it a little bit bright for you guys, definitely bright for me. So we've shifted location a little bit. So back to the differences between seed starting mix and potting soil. So we kind of talked a little bit about how seed starting mix has a much lighter, fluffier texture that makes it easier for seeds to really send their fine, delicate roots really deep. So it really helps them get off to a great start for that reason. The second primary difference that you'll find between potting soil and seed starting mix is that potting soil has nutrients or fertilizers, something to really give your plants some nutrition as they grow. Seed starting mix, for the most part, does not have that. And so that means seed starting mix is designed to support your plants just for that first little bit of growth, maybe the first week or two, when they're really still kind of feeding off the nutrients that were enclosed in the seed itself. So when a seed germinates, that seed includes the first little bit of nutrition that those plants need to grow. But once they've exhausted that nutrition and they start to get a little bit bigger, start to get some true leaves, then they really are going to need some sort of outside form of nutrition as well. So if you do start your seeds in a seed starting mix, at that point you would need to either transplant them to a potting mix that has included fertilizer, or else you would have to fertilize them. So that is just kind of one extra step that you need to be aware of, and one factor that might go into your decision as to whether to use potting mix or a seed starting mix. So as I said, I personally prefer to start my seeds in potting soil. I don't have a real scientific basis for why. It's just been my experience that they tend to do better for me. Now, I'm sure that experience is not the same for everybody, but I have started my seeds in seed starting mix. I've started them in potting soil. The seeds that I start in potting soil just tend to perform better for me overall. Also, I have had more than one occasion where I have gotten a bag of commercial seed starting mix from the store. I've added water to it, I've planted my seeds, and had an infestation of fungus gnats. I know they say it's sterilized on the bag, but it's happened to me on multiple occasions where I believe there were fungus gnat eggs or something like that in the seed starting mix. And that is something, if you've never had fungus gnats in your house, then you just trust me that it's not something that you want to deal with if you can avoid it at all. So that's just one more little reason why I tend to make my own potting soil. Now, if you do choose to use a seed starting mix, there are a couple ways you can kind of eliminate or at least reduce the possibility of fungus gnats. I have baked my soil in the oven before, I think if you decide to do that, go ahead and look up the exact specifications because it's not something that I do regularly. Well, my chicken has some strong opinions about that. I don't know if you can hear her in the background. But I know you want to cook it at a very low temperature for a somewhat extended period of time. So I would definitely do an internet search before trying that. I have also heard people say that they've added water with a diluted amount of hydrogen peroxide to it, and that will kill off the fungus gnats as well. That's not something I've tried personally, but that's something you could look into. Additionally, I have heard people say that they have had good luck pouring boiling water over their seed starting mix before using it. So again, that's something else to look into. I don't personally use any of those methods because I prefer to make my own potting soil. So before we move on to mixing up the potting soil that I like to use, I'd just like to hear from you guys. If you guys have experience on using seed starting mix versus potting soil, can you let me know in the comments what the difference was for you, which one you use, and why you prefer that, especially if you've tried both. I would like to hear how seeds performed differently for you, starting in seed starting mix versus potting soil. Now, I will say, when I make my own potting soil, I do address the main concern with starting your seeds in potting soil, which is that the texture is not always fluffy enough. The materials that I use, I make sure that they are very light and fluffy, and so while I'm calling it a potting mix, it is fluffy enough for my seeds to do really well in it also. So let's take a look at the ingredients that I'm going to use to mix up my potting mix this year. Now, when you're making a potting soil or a potting mix, the word soil in the title is kind of a misnomer because generally when I make it, I don't include any soil or any dirt or anything like that. And I believe if you get a commercial mix, it doesn't usually include those things either. So to use as a base for mine, I like to use this coconut core. Basically what this is the shredded husks of coconuts. I really like it because when you add water to it, so it comes in a block like this. I bought this, how big is this? This is an 11-pound block here, and this is highly compressed. So what I'm going to do is add water to this. This is going to expand to, I'm not sure how many times its original size, but it's going to fill up this entire container behind me. So if you see this Rubbermaid bin that I have here, this potting soil, this coconut core will expand to fill this entire container. So I like to use a container like that to mix up my potting soil in, and then I use a small percentage of it for seed starting, but I also grow a lot of plants on my deck, and I'm kind of always adding new potted plants to my lineup. So I like to just mix up the whole batch at the beginning of the season and then keep this bin in my garage, and I just kind of go through it as I need it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to rehydrate this coconut core with water. Now, the reason I chose coconut core as the base for my potting mix is, as I kind of alluded to before, once you add water to it and fluff it up, it becomes really light and fluffy, which is a great base for adult plants and seedlings alike to really send their roots down through. Coconut core also is great at holding water. So once you rehydrate this, it will hold water really well, which is something that's really important when you're first germinating seeds. They need to be kept moist for the entire germination process if you want to have success. It's also really helpful if you've grown potted plants and garden plants in the ground. You have probably noticed that the plants in pots dry out much more easily and need to be watered much more often than plants in the ground. So having a little bit of moisture holding capability in your soil is something that is going to really help you be successful with container gardening. So I really like coconut core for that reason. A lot of people also use peat moss. I choose to use coconut core because I just prefer it. Peat moss tends to have a little bit of an acidic pH. I don't think it's really the end of the world, but I like coconut core better. Also, coconut core is a little bit more renewable than peat moss. So for a variety of reasons, coconut core is what I use. Now, the other ingredients that we're going to use is we are going to add some perlite to this mix. I have a really excessively large bag of organic perlite here. Now, perlite, as you can see right in the bag here, I don't know if you can see it or not, it is advertised as improving drainage and aeration. Now, those are two things that are really important in a seed starting mix and in a potting soil. Now, you want your soil to be able to hold water, as we talked about with the coconut core, but you don't want it to be soggy. You want it to hold water, but you also want there to be air pockets. If it just gets compacted down and filled with water and can't drain, your plants are going to drown because the roots don't have access to oxygen. So that is where the perlite comes in. That is going to kind of allow air pockets to remain in your finished potting mix so that your plants have access to both water and oxygen. It just keeps it a little bit lighter, which is really good, especially when we're starting seedlings. Now, in my potting mix this year, I'm going to be including earthworm castings. This is actually going to be the first year that I have included this in my potting mix. So this is a little bit of an experiment for me. In the past, I have used compost instead. Basically, earthworm castings provide a really light level of nutrients for your plants. They're supposed to be excellent for promoting plant growth, compost provides those same benefits as well. But it has kind of been my experience. I mean, I make my compost outside, or I get compost commercially delivered outside, and it tends to get bugs in it sometimes. So my hope is that by replacing the compost in my normal mix with these earthworm castings, I'll be able to prevent bugs from being inside my house. So that's the reason I'll be trying earthworm castings this year. So definitely, if you are interested in seeing how this performs, follow along with me, and I will keep you updated once we start seeds together and as the season goes on, how I'm liking those earthworm castings. So that's going to provide a low level of nutrients. We also want to make sure that we have a little bit more nutrition for our plants, and that is where my fertilizer comes in. So to provide nutrients to my growing plants, in addition to the earthworm castings, we're going to be adding a little bit of this nutri-rich organic fertilizer. Now this is natural organic fertilizer derived from dried poultry waste. That's what the packaging says. So I have heard amazing things about this fertilizer. I'm going to tell you guys that this is the first year I've used it. In the past, I've used Espoma vegetable fertilizer, also organic. I've had great results with that as well. But I wanted to give this a try. This is a little bit more, because it comes in this big, this is either like a 40 or 50 pound bag. This is a little bit more cost effective for me, and I really like the fact that it is derived from poultry waste. So I wanted to give this a try. So I got the pelleted version to use in my actual vegetable garden. I also got the granulated version to use in my potting soil. So we'll be trying out a little bit of this in the potting soil mix. So these are the ingredients that I'm going to use. There are many other ingredients that you could choose from as well. Some people use vermiculite instead of perlite. I find that perlite is a little less expensive. So I think that they're not completely interchangeable, but for something like this, I don't think it matters that much which one you choose. So I'm going with the perlite. So what we're going to do first, we are going to head into my house. We are going to rehydrate this coco coir. If it was warmer outside, I would do this out here using the hose, but it's pretty cold out here. My hose is actually turned off right now to avoid pipe damage, and I am not going to want to fluff this up when it's filled with freezing water. So let's head on into my kitchen. We're going to do this part in the house, then we'll come back out here to mix everything up. All right, so we've got our bin with our coconut coir in here in the kitchen. So we're just gonna open it up. I'll show you what it looks like before we add water to it, and then we're gonna go ahead and rehydrate it. So as you can see, I have a little bit of dirt residue on this bin from last year. I didn't bother cleaning it out. I think it'll be fine. So as you can see, this is a very solid, very dehydrated block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up some pitchers of water. We're going to pour this on top of it and gradually rehydrate it right in this bin here. So I like to use warm water. I don't know if it really makes a difference or not, but it's more pleasant to work with either way. I think it might absorb it a little more quickly being warm, so that's what we're going to use. So this block down here is going to take many pitchers full of water to rehydrate. We'll just go a little bit at a time and fluff it up as we go. This is actually kind of a fun and satisfying thing. Just seeing how fast it sucks in that water and rehydrates. Plus, it's almost as good as getting to have your hands in the dirt. Now you can see, as it absorbs the water, it starts to fluff up and you can really grab nice handfuls of it. So just to speed up the process, I kind of like to peel it off as I go. If you don't want to be as hands-on with it as I am, you can just pour a bunch of water on it and let it sit overnight and come deal with it in the morning. I find it kind of therapeutic to work with, honestly. Plus it makes it quicker. So for all those reasons, I just fluff it up myself. So you can see as we kind of play with this and fluff it up, see this really nice fluffy texture it has? This is something that our seedlings are really going to be able to grow through really well. See how it has some fibers, but it doesn't have any clumps or twigs or anything like that. So this is going to work really well for our little seedlings. All right, so as you can see here, we got our entire block of coconut coir rehydrated, filled up pretty much this entire bin. Now we have this nice, fluffy, beautiful, just base to our potting soil to work with. Now, as you probably noticed, we don't really have any room in this bin for our other ingredients. Also, this bin is going to be incredibly heavy because this is all hydrated and wet now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a second bin. I'm going to put about half of this into the second bin, and then we're going to bring that half outside to mix up. And what I like to do is I'm just going to store the rest of this cocoa fiber in this bin here, just unmixed, and then when I need more, I can add the rest of the ingredients to that. So I'm going to get another bin, I'm going to load up half of this, and I'm going to meet you back outside so that we can go ahead and get this all mixed up. All right, so we got our entire package of coconut fiber rehydrated. As you can see here, I emptied about half of it, see this is about half full now, into a separate bin. So this is what we're going to work with right now. Now, we're in a little bit of a race against the clock right now and the sun, as the sun is going down. So we're gonna try to get this done as quickly as we can. Now it's weird, I don't know if you can see this steaming at all. It's pretty cold out here, but this soil is still nice and warm from rehydrating with warm water inside the house. So we are not going to be really scientific about this. I haven't tested the soil. I haven't followed some exact scientific way to mix this. I just kind of eyeball it. If you've been following me for a while, then that's no surprise to you. That's kind of my approach to life, is we kind of figure things out, and for the most part, they generally work out. So what we're going to do is we're going to estimate about how much this is, and I'm probably going to put roughly half that amount of perlite and worm castings in here, and then a couple handfuls of fertilizer. We'll just eyeball that, and if it looks good, we'll call it good. If not, I'll kind of tweak it a little bit. So we're gonna start with this big bag of perlite here. Just gonna cut this open, and you know I said I'm probably gonna try to add about half as much perlite as there is cocoa fiber, but I don't think I'm going to go that heavy with it. I'm thinking more like maybe a quarter to a third or so. I'll just pour it in until it looks about right. All right, so that looks pretty good. We're gonna go ahead and mix this up and see how it looks once it's mixed. So I'm just gonna fluff this up as much as I can until it's pretty well incorporated. As you can see, it's starting to look like potting soil now. And this is not a job to do wearing your nice clothes, wearing my old stained garden coat. All right, so that looks pretty good. It's not fully incorporated, but we're gonna go ahead and add the next component of our mix, which is going to be worm castings. So I'm kind of playing this by ear, but I'm thinking I'm going to go for probably about the same amount of worm castings as I had perlite. Now I want to show you what these worm castings look like. This actually just looks like really dark, rich soil. Almost kind of looks like really fine compost. So you can tell just by looking at this and seeing how dark it is, that has lots of great nutrients that our plants are really going to love. So I'm going to start with, we'll start with maybe about half this bag and see if that looks right. We can always add a little more if we need to. So that's probably about half. This is nice and dark and rich. I am going to be so excited to work with the soil and plant our seedlings in this. I think they're just going to love it. Just want to make sure if you're using a bin like this, get all the way down to the bottom to make sure everything gets mixed up. Now, as you can see, this is definitely better to do when it's warm out and you can wear short sleeves and not worry about having to do a huge load of laundry afterwards. But it is what it is. I didn't get this done last fall, so it gets done now, which means I'm gonna have to wash this coat tonight. All right, so I'm really happy with how this potting soil is looking. You can see it's nice and fluffy. It looks really well incorporated. It looks like it has a good balance. The last thing that we're going to add to this is a couple handfuls of our fertilizer. Now this fertilizer bag has some application guidelines for if you're putting it in a garden. It doesn't really, at least not that I saw, it doesn't have any information about what to do if you're adding it to potted plants or putting it in a mix. So I'm just gonna go with a couple handfuls of this and add it in. You definitely don't want to overdo your fertilizer. Too much is worse than not enough because you can always add more. So I'm gonna start with a couple handfuls of this. Then what I'm going to do is monitor my plants as they grow. If it seems like they're kind of yellowing, they're showing signs of nutrient deficiency, or they're growing really slowly, then I'm going to say that probably wasn't enough fertilizer. I'll add a little bit more. Maybe I'll give them a diluted liquid fertilizer, or I can mix up some more of this into the rest of the potting soil. But either way, we're just gonna kind of do the best we can and then let the plants be the judge of how well it came out. So you can see this fertilizer here. It almost looks like really fine gravel. So we're just gonna go ahead and sprinkle a few handfuls of this in here. Now it does say for 100 square feet of growing space, you're going to want to use between 8 and 12 pounds of fertilizer. This is not 100 square feet of growing space, so we're not going to add anywhere close to that. I'll just put in, I think that was, we'll do another one. That was probably about 7 or 8 handfuls of fertilizer. We'll start with that, and as I said, if the plants are telling me that they need more, we'll add more at that time. All right, so as I was mixing that up, that really didn't feel like enough fertilizer, so I'm gonna go ahead and add a couple more handfuls. And then, as I said, I'm still really erring on the side of too little rather than too much, but I want to make sure this is pretty well balanced. So I added 3 more handfuls. I'm just gonna give this another mix. We'll see how it comes out. So I just realized that we went through this whole video. We talked about seed starting mix versus potting mix. We talked about making our own potting soil, what we're including and why. And I completely forgot to tell you guys why I'm making my own. I mean, you can go to the store. There's lots of great potting mixes there. So definitely don't feel like you have to make your own, especially if you're just starting out gardening and it's kind of intimidating to you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with buying potting mix at the store. The reason I decided to make my own, there are a couple of reasons really. One is that I tried a bunch of the potting mixes that I could find locally and I just wasn't really happy with any of them. My plants never seemed to do all that well in the potting mix. So I decided that what I was going to do, I knew that my seedlings really liked cocoa coir, so I figured that was a great place to start. I kind of did some reading about things that you would normally include in your potting mix, and I came up with this general mix a few years ago. I mean, I say I came up with it. I mean, lots of people make a mix like this. It's not like it was my personal invention or anything like that. But this is just the blend that works really well for me. And I tried it and my plants really liked it. So I've just been kind of tweaking it here and there. So the primary reason, as I said, was just that I didn't really find anything locally that I really liked. I also was trying to save money. Now, to be 100% honest, prices of these materials have gone up since I started making this potting soil. I'm not actually sure if this is still cost effective. I would guess that this probably is still saving me money over buying this quantity of potting soil. I mean, I have my bin not quite full again, but it's probably about 3/4 full. And this is only half of the cocoa fiber. I have enough to make a whole other bin like this. Plus I have enough of all of these other materials. I have more than enough perlite and fertilizer to make more batches. I have enough worm castings to mix with probably about the rest of the cocoa fiber. So because I use so much potting soil, this was just something, it was just kind of a way for me to save a little bit of money. Another reason that I decided to make my own was because I didn't want to have to buy separate seed starting mix and potting mix. And a lot of the commercial potting mixes that you'll find, they do have chunks and sticks and twigs and things that will kind of inhibit your seedlings from really growing well in the beginning. So I wanted to make something that was light and fluffy, kind of like a seed starting mix, but still had some substance to it and had some nutrients in it, like a potting mix. So I kind of just combined them to make what, in my opinion, is the best of both worlds. So as I said, this is not necessarily the all-time perfect potting mix. This is as simple as I can make it, really. So if you have another potting mix recipe that you like, go ahead and leave that in the comments because I would definitely be open to hearing more ideas. I'm sure other people would be open to hearing more ideas too. So I gotta get inside. It's starting to get dark out here. I'm not sure if you can tell on the video or not, but the sun is definitely down. It's time for me to go make dinner and it's time for me to get inside and warm up a little bit. So thank you guys so much for joining me and hanging out with me while we made our potting mix for the 2023 garden season. I can't wait to start seeds and I'm hoping that you guys will come back and hang out with me again while I start those seeds. So I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope you're getting through winter and looking forward to seed starting season and gardening season, and I can't wait to see you guys again soon. Bye guys, I'll see you next time.